Welcome to Africa News Roundup. Starting off this segment, leaders from Africa and Europe meeting in the Angolian capital Luanda on Monday committed to strengthening trade and better tackling illegal migration. Marking 25 years of AU-EU relations, the 2 days of talks saw the European Union pledge to support African nations develop, industrialize, and diversify their exports. A declaration at the end of the summit produced a wide-ranging declaration that nodded to Europe's desire to secure critical minerals and Africa's desire for economic growth. The summit aimed to deepen both economic and security ties between the two continents, with delegates emphasizing the need to achieve peace and multilateralism. The two partners will also strengthen economic ties with commitment to promote investment in sustainable infrastructures, manufacturing and agriculture, and expand mobility exchanges between peoples. Here's my analysis. The AU-EU summit in Luanda demonstrates the efforts of both parties to revive a relationship that has run out of steam. Europe desires to access the African critical minerals in a stable environment, whereas the African leaders are urging to industrialize and produce more value-added products. The trade, security, and migration pledges are an indication that they are trying to modernize the partnership, but it will only be real with whether the EU will provide their terms more fairly than they used to. Still on African news, Nigeria suffered its second mass school abduction this week, with authorities confirming an attack on a Catholic school in the conflicted, battered northern region of the country on Friday. Local media broadcaster Arise TV said that 52 school children were seized, and local police said they have deployed a team to rescue the children. The kidnappings are happening amid U.S. President Donald Trump's claims of targeted killings against Christians in the West African country. Attacks in Nigeria affect both Christians and Muslims. Kidnappers in the past have included Boko Haram, a jihadi insurgency that carried out mass abduction of 276 Chibok schoolgirls more than a decade ago, bringing the Islamist extremist group to global attention. With at least 1,500 students that have been seized in the years since Chibok attacked, many were released only after ransoms were paid. Other armed groups in northern Nigeria carry out abductions largely for ransom, and authorities have said they include mostly former herders who took up arms against farming communities after clashes between them over increasingly strained resources. In 2020, gunmen on motorcycles attacked a government secondary school in Katsina State and abducted more than 300 boys. In 2021, gunmen abducted more than 300 schoolgirls in a nighttime raid on a government secondary school boarding school in Zamfara State. And in 2024, gunmen on motorcycles abducted 287 students at a government secondary school in Kaduna State. But the Islamic extremists in recent months have repeatedly overrun military outposts, mined roads with bombs, and raided civilian communities despite the military's claims of success against them. The surge in activity has strained security efforts across Nigeria's north. Last month, President Bola Tinubu replaced the country's security chiefs, and earlier this year, the U.S. government approved the sale of $346 million in arms to strengthen Nigeria's fight against insurgencies and criminal groups. More recently, Trump has threatened Nigeria with potential military action and a halt to aid assistance, while alleging that Nigeria's government is failing to rein in the persecution of Christians. Nigeria has rejected the claim. Here is my analysis. The recent Nigerian school abduction indicates that the level of insecurity is still deep throughout the north of the country, with jihadists and criminal gangs of armed kidnappers still counting their operation regardless of the frequent crackdowns by the government. And despite the change in security leaders and military expenditure by the government, insurgents and bandits are still very active and very mobile. And Nigeria is yet to go the extra mile to secure schools and the rural communities against organized armed groups who are impacting on a lot of lives in the country. The government ought to take some expedient action to maintain security. And finally, on African news, Tanzania has cancelled next month's Independence Day celebrations, with the funds to be instead spent on rebuilding infrastructure damaged in recent election unrest, Prime Minister Mwigulu Nchemba has said. His announcement comes as the opposition and others have been calling for people to gather on Independence Day, 9th December, to demonstrate about the killings that took place following last month's disputed poll. The opposition believe hundreds of people died in the crackdown, and the government has yet to give a death toll and has set up commission of inquiry. An international coalition of lawyers and human rights groups has now formally asked the International Criminal Court (ICC) to investigate President Samia and her government for crimes against humanity allegedly committed during the unrest, including mass killings and the secret disposal of more than 500 bodies. This made the government impose an internet blackout for 5 days from the 29th of October, election day, and threatened anyone sharing photos from the process, as gruesome images and videos of dead Tanzanians have been shared widely online, with international media verifying some of the graphic footage as authentic. However, the government has criticized their portrayal as it aimed at tarnishing the country's image, insisting the country is safe. Now, the cancellation of Independence Day celebration in Tanzania is an indication that the government tried to contain the domestic and international pressure following the contested election. The aversion to reconstruction is an indication of stability, but it also does not happen in the very light of serious allegations in authorities of mass abuses, including ICC requests to investigate. This crisis has literally tainted the image of Tanzania to a great extent and brought into view major political divisions that have not yet been resolved. The leaders of Tanzania must do what is right to its citizens. And that's all I have for you on Africa News Roundup. All this news were gotten from a research from Africa News. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.